Some of you may agree with me, and some of you may not. But in my view, it would be hard for anyone in this room today to make the case that the United States of America, our great country, a country which all of us love, it would be hard to make the case that we are a just society or anything resembling a just society today. In the United States of America today, there is massive injustice in terms of income and wealth inequality. Injustice is rampant. We live, and I hope all of you know this, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. But most Americans don't know that, because almost all of that wealth and income is going to the top 1%. Now, that's the truth. We are living at a time, and I want all of you, if you would, put this in the context of the Bible, not me, in the context of the Bible. We are living at a time where a handful of people have wealth beyond comprehension. And I'm talking about tens of billions of dollars, enough to support their families for thousands of years, with huge yachts and jet planes and tens of billions, more money than they would ever know what to do with. But at that very same moment, there are millions of people in our country, let alone the rest of the world, who are struggling to feed their families. They are struggling to put a roof over their heads, and some of them are sleeping out on the streets. They are struggling to find money in order to go to a doctor when they are sick. Now, when we talk about morality, and when we talk about justice, we have to, in my view, understand that there is no justice when so few have so much and so many have so little. There is no justice, and I want you to hear this clearly, when the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, the top 1/10 of 1% today in America owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. And in your hearts, you will have to determine the morality of that and the justice of that. In my view, there is no justice when here in Virginia and Vermont and all over this country, millions of people are working long hours for abysmally low wages of $7.25 an hour, of $8 an hour, of $9 an hour, working hard but unable to bring in enough money to adequately feed their kids. And yet at that same time, 58% of all new income generated is going to the top 1%. You have got to think about the morality of that, the justice of that, and whether or not that is what we want to see in our country. In my view, there is no justice when, in recent years, we have seen a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires, while at the same time, the United States of America has the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. How can we, I want you to go into your hearts, how can we talk about morality, about justice, when we turn our backs on the children of our country? Now, you have got to think about it. You have to think about it, and you have to feel it in your guts. Are you content? Do you think it's moral that 20% of the children in this country, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, are living in poverty? Do you think it is acceptable that 40% of African American children are living in poverty? In my view, there is no justice, and morality suffers when in our wealthy country, millions of children go to bed hungry. That is not morality. And that, in my view, is not what America should be about. In my view, there is no justice when the 15 wealthiest people in this country in the last 2 years saw their wealth increased by $170 billion. 2 years. Wealthiest 15 people in this country saw their wealth increase by $170 billion. My friends, that is more wealth acquired in a 2-year period than is owned by the bottom 130 million Americans. And while the very, very rich become much richer, millions of families have no savings at all, nothing in the bank. And they worry every single day that if their car breaks down, they can't get to work. And if they can't get to work, they lose their jobs. And if they lose their jobs, they don't feed their families. In the last 2 years, 15 people saw a $170 billion increase in their wealth. 45 million Americans live in poverty. That, in my view, is not justice. That is a rigged economy designed by the wealthiest people in this country to benefit the wealthiest people in this country at the expense of everybody else. In my view, there is no justice when thousands of Americans die every single year because they don't have any health insurance and don't go to a doctor when they should. I have talked personally to doctors throughout Vermont and physicians all over this country, and without exception, they tell me that there are times when patients walk into their office very, very sick, and they say, "Why didn't you come in here when you were sick?" And the answer is, "I don't have any health insurance, or I have a high deductible. I thought the problem would get better." And sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes they die because they lack health